All right. So do you both feel ready?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's get started. Hello, welcome to Couple of Flicks. I am Tristan.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Zach.
All right. Today we are talking about our top 5 individual favorite 80s horror films. And just to kind of throwing this out again, like I usually do, the lists are not final because nothing is ever final, right? So anyway, do either of you guys want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Doesn't matter.
All right, I'll go first. So my number 5 choice is a Dario Argento movie. And it's one that I actually didn't realize that not everybody actually really likes this one. For some reason I was under the impression that it was actually a really popular one, but it's not. Phenomena. That's my number 5. It's a hard movie to really recommend to people because the plot kind of, as soon as I say what it's about, it immediately sounds like something that would be really stupid that nobody would want to watch. It's basically, it's about a girl in a boarding school who can talk to insects. And like, I know that sounds really lame, but it's actually a movie that makes the most of a premise like that. Like there's a lot of other stuff going on in it. There's a sort of a murder mystery kind of happening. There's a situation involving this this conspiracy at this boarding school. There's the dynamics going on between her and the other girls. But yeah, I'd say as a horror movie, as a murder mystery, as like almost like a weird fantasy, I feel like it blends together a lot of really interesting elements. And yeah, I really loved it, you know. Just very imaginative, creepy. The ending is probably one of my favorite horror movie endings ever. I just love it. Phenomena. That's my number 5 choice. So I think when it was originally released, it was called Creepers or something like that. Creeper. I don't remember what it was originally called. Something like that. But yeah, Phenomena.
Haven't seen that one.
Nope, me neither.
Yeah, it's good.
For my number 5, I will put Predator. If you count that as a horror.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it's not my favorite, but going through this list, I realized I haven't really seen that many 80s horrors.
Okay.
Like, I saw the originals of them, which were apparently done in the 70s.
Yeah. And
I never really bothered to see the sequels, which were all done in the 80s, like, you know, Alien and Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I was expecting to put them all on my list, but when I was looking through them, they were all done in the 70s.
Okay.
And then I never really saw the sequels to any of them.
Oh, yeah. Well.
So I have a short, kind of cheesy list of
that's totally fine.
Horrors, so yeah.
No, that's totally fine.
Predator was one of them. I was like, yeah, it's fine. Schwarzenegger movies, you know.
I find Predator to be horrifying, honestly. I find it actually really scary. To me, there's nothing scarier than because to me it's not it's not really the kind of concept that should be scary, because these are obviously really confident, large, you know, strong characters that can very easily take care of themselves, and yet they're all getting wiped out by this, you know, force that somehow is bigger and beyond them, and that ended up actually being really scary to watch for me. So I would consider it a horror movie personally. I mean, maybe objectively speaking, it isn't a horror movie, but in my opinion, I think of it as a horror film.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So my number 5 is Videodrome.
Nice.
Good old David Cronenberg.
That might be my favorite David Cronenberg film, Videodrome.
I think it might be mine too.
Yeah. Did you ever see that one?
Nope.
Oh man,
I haven't seen it.
It's twisted. It's great though, and I mean, you would say it probably has some relevance today. Honestly, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's if you haven't seen it, let's just say that it has aged very interestingly.
Yeah. Some good special effects. The body horror.
Yeah, the makeup is incredible. James Woods' character and kind of what happens to him. I mean, probably as far as horror movies go, that might be the bleakest horror movie ever. I don't know. It doesn't get much bleaker than that, in my opinion. That ending was pretty ominous. But yeah, it's a great horror movie because it blurs like social commentary and with its body horror and its strange sort of like hallucinatory sort of effects. Actually, I kind of feel like Brain Scan, the one we talked about in the last episode. I feel like that there was some Videodrome influence with that film.
Yeah.
So, I forget what my number 4 was. Okay, I'm just gonna go with my number 4 pick, which is really, really cheap, low budget movie called The Deadly Spawn. I just love everything about that movie. It's pretty much it just captures a certain atmosphere and there's a certain quality to it that I just find really enchanting and amazing. There's a certain degree of relatability to it because it's about a kid who's obsessed with horror movies, and I was obsessed with horror movies when I was a kid as well. There's it's that kind of mixed with this sort of semi like alien invasion plot about these little disgusting sort of worm monsters that are invading this home and kind of invading this small town. But most of the film takes place kind of within the confines of a single house. And there's parts that I find really scary. There's parts that I find really shocking. There's some really good twists. Like I said, it's very, very cheap. It kind of reminds me of when I chose the movie Dark Star for my favorite science fiction films, and that's a really cheap movie. This is also kind of cheap in that same way, but I just find it has a really, really just wonderful quality that I just adore. So Deadly Spawn is my number 4 pick for my top 5 favorite 80s horror movies.
Nice. I've heard the title, but haven't seen it.
Yeah, I love that movie. I've seen it a few times.
My number 4, I'm gonna go with Gremlins.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't necessarily consider that a horror too much, but I mean, on the box it says it's a horror, so I'll just go with that.
Yeah. Again, I just like Predator. I would consider it a horror movie personally. So.
Yeah.
Definitely when I was a kid, I was freaked out by the gremlin parts and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a funny, cool little movie.
Yeah.
Little creatures running around and shit.
It is.
And I always loved Furbies and shit too, and they're apparently based off of those.
Yeah.
So that was always fun. But yeah, Gremlins. It's a fun little kids horror movie, I guess.
Yeah, it's a family movie,
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw Gremlins?
In December.
Oh.
Try to watch it every December. It's a Christmas movie.
Yeah. It is. It's the best kind of Christmas movie. It's one that's brutally honest about, both the beauty and the horror of the holidays. So.
Yeah.
We've talked about the sequel before. Okay, let's not get on that. But, yeah, I love that movie.
My number 4 is American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah.
One of the best.
I would agree that movie had an amazing that whole sequence was really powerful. I felt so bad for him during that whole transformation. Like that looked like really, really painful. And the makeup. I mean, you could see why Rick Baker won an Oscar for the makeup design in it, because like it looked genuinely painful, and like the sound of his bones shifting and stuff, and then also like the way the corpse makeup looked in that movie too, how disgusting that looked. Like that has some of the best makeup. You know, that movie's scary as hell. It's actually really funny too, but yeah. I think one of the concepts that I always find terrifying is the concept of not knowing whether you're awake or asleep. And that's a movie that definitely plays into that.
Oh yeah.
The dream sequences in that film are like actually probably the scariest parts in my opinion. Like just because they are like they're so jolting. I don't know why. Like they just freak me out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's actually, that's a good one. My number 3, I think, is what I'm on now. So this one's a little bit of a stronger one. I'm choosing Tetsuo the Iron Man. So it's kind of a quasi-experimental Japanese semi-avant-garde picture from like the late 80s. It's very industrial based splatter horror, somewhat erotic leather punk movie about this guy who basically he starts shape shifting. It's kind of Cronenberg-esque in that it's very based in body horror as well, and it's basically about this guy who starts like wherever he goes, iron and metal and steel, everything that he's around that's like of that variety or of that mineral starts sticking to him, and he starts fusing with all these different pieces of metal and stuff, and he ends up having to duke it out with this crazy I'm not even sure how, like, who he is, but like at the beginning of the movie there's like this car accident that happens, and like somehow the guy who was a victim of it gets like he's this guy who's obsessed with metal and obsessed with like scraping metal on his body and on his teeth and stuff, and so there's a lot of really loud pitched noises in it. Probably not the kind of movie that'd be good to watch if you're prone to like sensory overload. Definitely not one to watch if you're pregnant. There's a lot of very painful looking things that happen in it. But I love it. I think it's, as far as horror goes, there's nothing more visceral to me than that one. It's just really edgy, really powerful. There's a lot of like images and sounds that stick with you, and there's also kind of a musical quality to it as well. And it also has kind of a weird sense of humor. It's such a deranged film. I love it.
Nice. It's on my Shudder playlist.
It's definitely twisted, but I think it's like a genuine horror movie. I mean, I really, that's one I admire a lot. So just because it's very well made as far as like sound design, editing, and visuals. I mean, yeah, it's definitely it's like I said, it's visceral as hell. But you know, if you're into like heavier types of horror movies, that one I would definitely recommend.
We'll have to watch it soon.
Maybe. Yeah. It kind of has like a Japanese anime kind of quality to it. You know. Yeah.
Okay. My number, what is this?
3.
3? I'm gonna go with the Lost Boys. Yep.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. It's because I'm a big vampire fan, so I had to throw one of those in there, and saw that pop up on the list. So
yeah,
it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember liking it a lot. So yeah,
The Lost Boys is a classic. I can't imagine the 80s without it. And also the soundtrack, by the way, like that movie had an awesome soundtrack.
Yeah.
And also the setting, like it takes place kind of on the boardwalk.
Right. And yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's a really cool setting for like a movie like that to take place, and to have it be about like a bunch of kids that are into comic books and stuff too, which aren't really your typical sort of heroes. I always find that sort of thing really charming. So.
Yeah. Just anything to do with vampires, I'm pretty into, except for Twilight. So.
Yeah. Twilight, I kind of even question whether or not those are actual vampires.
Oh, I don't think they are. No, they're not.
Yeah, not really. They don't really follow enough of the rules.
No.
Like,
no. If you don't burst into flames in the sun, you're not a vampire.
No, if you just sparkle,
you just sparkle like a goddamn
diamond, like a beautiful diamond.
So fucking stupid.
Twinkly, beautiful little diamonds in the sun is what vampires are, apparently, according to the Lost Boys, according to Twilight. But according to the Lost Boys, if you actually get in the sunlight, you die. And man, oh man, do the characters in this movie, the death scenes in the Lost Boys, those are some amazing death scenes. Just a lot of exploding vampires and lots of blood.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, but did you ever see the sequels?
No.
Oh, okay.
I heard that.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't talk about them. Did you ever see them, Zach?
No, I have The Tribe, but I haven't watched it yet.
Well, I've seen both of them. And I've seen them. That's all I'm gonna say.
That bad, huh?
Well, I mean, they're pretty bad. The third one I liked a little bit more than the second one, but honestly, they're both total crap. Like, really, they should have just left it at one.
Yeah.
Isn't like the only person like Corey Feldman that returns?
Well, Corey Feldman returns in both of them, but then I think it was the second one, the other one, his other guy, the guy who was with him,
Corey Haim.
Not Corey Haim, but Corey Haim, I think he might have shown up in one. You see, I can't even remember now. Like either Corey Haim or the other Frog brother. Or maybe it was both of them. I don't know. They're not even memorable. Like they have none of the same qualities that the first film had. I like the fact that they tried to at least keep the setting consistent, but they're so schlocky and they're not cool. They're just cheesy and the effects aren't that good. You could tell they didn't really have much of a budget. Just don't watch them. I mean, unless you like have like a high tolerance for bad vampire movies. I mean, I guess they're okay if you have a high tolerance, but otherwise, no.
All right.
And also, they messed with the sound. They do have the theme song from the first one in, I think, both of them, but it doesn't sound the same as it did in the first one. They changed it to like sort of a newer sounding. I don't know. It just wasn't good.
All right. Well, my number 3 is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. Probably John Carpenter's scariest movie in my opinion. I mean, I would say anyway. Some people would say the Halloween, but I don't know. I think the Thing is scarier.
Yeah, and the effects like still hold up to me today.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. That might be I think that's my favorite Kurt Russell film too. I think I've said that before. But I'd say like I can't think of a better Kurt Russell performance or better Kurt Russell character, really, than MacReady in The Thing. Keith David was great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got who's that scary guy? I'm not going to remember the name of it. Oh, Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
He's the scariest man who's ever walked the face of the earth. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Even if that movie wasn't about a killer alien that takes over people's bodies and occupies their lives, just the fact that Wilford Brimley shows his face is enough to make it one of the scariest movies. So great movie. Is it my turn? It is.
Yeah.
My number 2, it's another really strong one. I wouldn't recommend unless you have a strong stomach. Possession, which if it's the first Polish movie you ever watch, it's definitely going to frighten you away from Polish cinema for life. I'm not going to go too far into what that one's about. I'm just going to say that it's very allegorical. The acting is incredible by Sam Neill and Isabella Gianni. And also somebody else is in it that I really liked. But I'm not remembering his name at the moment. But anyway, Heinz Bennett, he's really good in it too. But pretty much it's a movie about sort of a marriage that's collapsing. But there's a lot of circumstances and a lot of kind of things that are going on. And it's a film that you sort of slowly discover what's actually happening as it goes along. And it starts to kind of like, it's very dreamlike. The logic of it is very bizarre and offbeat. There's a strange sense of humor to it. It's one of the noisiest movies of all time. A lot of screaming in it. The effects in it, I believe, are by the same guy that did Alien. They're very strange looking. Just a very bizarre, offbeat, strange type of horror movie that I happen to really have a lot of fondness and admiration for. So,
Nice.
Possession, 1981, I think it came out.
It's been on my watch list for a while, but the Blu-ray is like so expensive and stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's the one thing. It's a little. It used to be really. It used to be a lot harder to find than it is now.
Yeah.
Back before it got released on Blu-ray recently. Well, not that recently, but in the last 4 or 5 years. Before that, a copy of that was like upwards of $100, $150, dollars. And the way I saw it originally was it was on YouTube at one point. So I just, somebody put it up on there, and so that's how I first saw it. That wasn't really the ideal way to see it, but now that it's on Blu-ray, more people really have the chance to check it out. But unfortunately, it is kind of pricey still. Yeah. But it is worth watching.
Okay, my number 2. I'm gonna go with Poltergeist. Just a classic, easy to. I mean,
Poltergeist. That movie, yeah, that was. I think that might have been one of the first horror movies I ever saw. Period.
Yeah, I think mine too. It's Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
It's not that scary at all, but it's
Toby
definitely
Hooper.
a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, I think it's. I mean, I think it's the kind of horror movie where, like, yeah, I mean, I suppose I could think of scarier movies, but when you're little and you watch something like that, I mean, it kind of plays on a lot of childhood fears about like your dolls coming to life, or like there's like a giant monster in your closet or something like that, or in your TV.
All classic.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a kid, that's like the scariest thing ever, and like when you're that young, you have like a really like sort of simple imagination, and so that's the kind of film that sort of it's kind of preying more on those who have simple types of imaginations.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I remember. There were some parts. There's still some parts in it that freak me out, like the part where the dad has the dream, where he like peels his face off or whatever. Like that freaked me out, and that still freaks me out. And then the part with all the skeletons, that was gross. Yeah, that kind of stuff really scares me. So
definitely has its moments.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I didn't actually see it until a couple years ago.
Okay.
So they had a haunted house for it at Halloween Horror Nights. So I watched it before we went.
Cool.
I was like, why have I never seen this before?
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah. I like that one.
It's a classic.
Yeah. And there are sequels. They're not good, but there are some decent visual effects in them, I will say. And also you got the creepy guy with the white teeth, who shows up in the second one. And I guess he was practically on his deathbed when they filmed it. Actually, that movie had all three of those movies have kind of a creepy history behind them too, because like didn't like a few people that were involved in the making of that movie die, and the young girl, it was really sad how she passed away too.
Yeah.
But yeah, Poltergeist though, I mean that's a 80s horror classic,
Yep.
So, and yeah, interesting how it's directed by Tobe Hooper. Like a lot of people think of it as Spielberg, but it's actually Hooper and Spielberg.
Yep.
So that's kind of a cool match. R.I.P. Tobe Hooper, by the way.
Didn't that just happen recently? A couple years ago?
Yeah. It was really sad when it happened. And it was like right after, I guess, like there was some kind of situation where like the girl that he was with, I guess she like had abused him or something, or like beat him up, and and so like he was kind of having a hard time that last couple of years, from what I understand, and and then he passed away, so it was a really sad time. But anyway, I think pretty much everybody who was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or almost everybody who was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at this point, has passed away. I think Edwin Neal's still alive though. Last time I checked.
Damn.
Huh.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
All right. My number 2 is The Shining.
The Shining is one of the scariest movies of all time. I think that's kind of hard to dispute at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's my number 1.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a good number 1. It's a good choice, period. I mean, there's nothing scarier I think what scares me the most about that movie is how like it's not even really totally clear what it's actually even about. Like,
right.
Like, yeah, there's like the aspect of the dad going crazy, but then there's also the supernatural aspect as well. And it's never really quite clear how connected they are or how not connected they are. Both aspects are established, but neither are really. It's not clear like whether or not it's what the source of the conflict is coming from. And then the ending, where you see his picture, in the crowd, like his face in the crowd in that picture, like that kind of just makes you question everything he even just saw, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember walking in as a kid on my grandmother watching it, and like it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. There's, I mean, I think I still have, once in a while I'll still have like a nightmare of like that old lady, like the part where he goes into room 237 and there's the dead woman in the bathtub.
Oh yeah.
Like that part just
creepy shit.
So disturbing and gross. Oh. And I knew somebody who had that as their ringtone, that lady's laugh. Like this is somebody I knew in Kansas who was like a big horror fan, had her laugh as his ringtone. And I remember like I was in the car with him, and he was like, we were driving home and it was like really dark, and his phone rings and that laugh goes on. I'm like, you son of a bitch, what are you turn it off? Yeah. Shining, amazing movie. Stanley Kubrick was a brilliant filmmaker, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, I would have to say.
Mm-hmm.
His films are amazing. And The Shining, that's as good as, I mean, there's enough material in there to make 5 horror movies. Also, good child actor as well. You know, I mean, I know he didn't really appear in anything else, but he did a great job in it. So.
Yeah.
Danny Lloyd. So my number one pick.
Did you see Dr. Sleep?
Not yet, actually. Did you?
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
No. I want to. It's really long though. I just haven't really had.
No, really.
Yeah, it's hard to I need to find the time to actually sit down and kind of devote the time to it, because it's over 2.5 hours, I think.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, and I definitely want to see it. I've heard mixed things. Some people seem to think it's really outstanding, and then some people think that it's a boring waste of time. I'm pretty open-minded. I'm ready. I know that the idea of a sequel to a Kubrick movie is sacrilege.
Yeah, it seems insane.
It is insane, but it has happened before. There was a sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey that nobody remembers. 2010, the year we make contact, which I'm not going to call it a bad movie. It's not a good sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey, but as a movie, it's not necessarily a bad film, is what I would say about 2010, the year we make contact, which, like I said, nobody's seen, or hardly anybody I know has seen. I'm open to what a sequel will bring, but I'm always going to think of The Shining as a separate thing altogether. So my number one is a movie I've talked about, The Vanishing, from the late 80s, also known as Sporloose. Just a really terrifying movie. Just the whole concept of it, and the slow anticipation to something that is going to be devastating. The slow pace really works in favor of the horror in this film. It's, just to kind of quickly summarize the plot, if I haven't already. This guy goes with his girlfriend to a rest stop, and she ends up disappearing, and he becomes obsessed with trying to find her. And eventually, after a long period of time where his search has essentially become obsessive, he's become fixated on actually finding where she is. She's been missing long enough that the chances of her even still being alive are pretty much next to nothing, but he still wants to find her. And eventually he comes across a possible clue that leads to something that will be bad. And as early on, because the film has a very dreadful, sort of creepy, slow, anticipating kind of tone to it, kind of like a Hitchcock film or a De Palma film or something. Just a creepy feel, just creepy and eerie and strange. And the direction it heads in is devastating. I mean, I'm never going to forget the ending to that film as long as I live. So The Vanishing, that's my number one choice for my favorite 80s horror movie. And, some people may not think of it as a horror movie, but I sure as hell do, because it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. So
still need to check it out.
It's great.
To watch it.
You said your number one pick is The Shining?
Yeah, my number one is The Shining.
Excellent.
All right. Well, my number one is The Evil Dead. It's my favorite horror movie of all time, so.
Yeah, I figured I had that on my list, but I figured you were going to say it, so I let you.
The Evil Dead is incredible. It's, budget filmmaking, low budget filmmaking at its best. I mean, it's just, it's inspirational to think that these people traveled up to this cabin every weekend to shoot this gory movie about these teenagers that chop each other to pieces. So much ingenuity. It's Sam Raimi. He just, I love that movie. Just the level of imagination.
Yeah, that whole series. It's so good.
Yeah. And would you say the first Evil Dead is the best?
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like 2 more, but
yeah, I liked 2 a lot as well.
Yeah. 2 is a lot of fun. 2 is great. 2 is a blast. I like 1 more. because that's more of a grueling, that's more of an experience, you know, that's more of like a grueling, intense, you know, like experience. Whereas Evil Dead 2, I mean, Evil Dead 2 is pretty grueling as well, but it's also a lot of other things. It's also sort of lighthearted. There's a sense of humor to it. There's sort of a stylishness to it, you know, and the first one just has a gritty, dark, creepy, odd feel to it, and the sound design is great. The howling wind, and also like that scene with the trees, like where the girl gets attacked, like that was scary. All the possession scenes where the people are like where the makeup and the visuals kind of take center stage, where just everything goes nuts and there's pus and blood spewing everywhere. I mean, it's amazing, you know?
Yeah.
Stop motion. Yeah. It's a work of art. And incredible camera work too.
Oh yeah, the way they did the going through the woods stuff.
Yeah.
Just put it on a plank of wood, I guess.
Yeah. I love that. That's so funny and interesting, and just another reminder of how easy it is to make a movie these days. Sorry about my my Google Maps. Yeah, no, good choice. Do either of you guys have honorable mentions?
Not written down.
Not really, yeah.
Mine are The Hunger, which is a David Bowie vampire movie. I find that one to be very, very creepy.
Oh.
Pin, which is a very, very strange, I think it's Canadian, I'm not positive, film about a anatomical doll and sort of, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it's a weird movie. Let's see, The Hidden. I don't know if that's really a horror movie or not, but The Hidden, which is it's a horror movie about it's a movie about an alien that takes over people's bodies. I have Videodrome. I have Scanners.
Scanners, that's a good one.
Scanners is amazing. And Dead Ringers, I didn't know if that counted, but I put that on my honorable mentions list as well. Oh yeah, and then here's a word. Oh wait, what were you about to say?
I was gonna say I have a Reanimator.
Oh yeah, Reanimator is really good. Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that infamous head scene. Oh yeah, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, which did you ever see that one?
No, I know that it comes up on a lot of lists that I've seen though.
It's pretty cheesy, but I do love that one. Christmas Evil.
Yeah, I just got that Blu-ray actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, probably won't watch it until December, but.
Oh yeah, because that's definitely got to be. I definitely want to choose that one if we decide to do more Christmas horror movies. Christmas Evil is that's my favorite Christmas horror movie, I think. So,
Nice.
Along with Black Christmas.
I got Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh, I love Killer Clowns. That's a good one. And the great soundtrack.
Yeah.
80s movies have such great soundtracks. What was the one that it was kind of it was not a good movie at all, but it was I don't remember what it was called. Anyway, whatever it was had a good soundtrack. Oh, here's one. Not a lot of people like this one, but Unhinged. Have you ever heard of that one?
I don't think so.
Oh, I mean, it's not really very good, but it's worth watching for the ending. It's really slow. Might not be everybody's cup of tea. Pretty much nothing happens to it. It happens in it until about the last 10 minutes. But those last 10 minutes are pretty. I mean, they're pretty epic.
I got Maniac.
Oh yeah, that's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That movie smells bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely love Maniac. And then there was another one that came out around that time too that was also really, really sleazy. Actually, I'd say it was even sleazier than Maniac. It was really gross actually. It was A Nightmare in a Damaged Brain, I think it was called. Did you ever see that?
No.
The DVD is really, really hard to find, but that one made me feel really dirty. It's another one of those movies that makes kind of like how Basket Case and Maniac kind of make the best of like the sleazier, seedier parts of the city. Nightmares in a Damaged Brain is kind of that way too.
I put Basket Case on my honorable mentions, but only because I've seen it. I didn't really like it all that much. But I saw it.
Well, Basket Case, I mean, it's one of those movies where there's no limits, essentially. I mean, and actually, speaking of Basket Case, I did put on my honorable mentions. I did put Brain Damage by the same director, Frank Henenlotter. So, and then I got a couple twisted foreign horror films. I got Angst, which is or Angst, I guess is the literal American translation, which is a Austrian serial killer movie, which in my opinion puts films like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer and Maniac to shame as far as being like really like putting you in the head of a killer. There's a really, really dark Spanish horror movie I saw years ago that I wouldn't really recommend to anybody, called In a Glass Cage, which is about Nazi war crimes. Brilliantly made, but definitely not recommended. And then the last one I wanted to mention that not a lot of people have seen, but I just kind of wanted to throw this one out there, was Paper House, which I kind of think of as almost being like a precursor to like what Guillermo del Toro would end up doing as a filmmaker, kind of blending fantasy and horror, kind of in the way he does with like Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone and Kronos and films like that, where it's sort of horror, but it's sort of fantasy as well. Paper House is kind of like an early example of that. And it has kind of a creepy premise. It's like this what do you call it? This girl, like she like draws a picture, and then she has a dream, and she dreams about this house that she drew in this picture, and she goes into the house and discovers this kid that's inside of it, and so she draws this kid, and so basically these dreams that she's having it's like another dimension that she's like creating in these drawings, and it's kind of an odd film. It has sort of a strange quality to it. It kind of goes off the rails about halfway through, but I'd still recommend it because it's weird enough, and I feel like it's one that not a lot of people have seen. And,
yeah, I hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah, Paper House. It used to play on like HBO a lot back in the day, and I think the person that directed it, was like a music video director, but I'm not positive. But I really like that one. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Reflecting Skin a little bit, which is a weird early 90s horror movie. It had sort of a similar, like odd, otherworldly kind of feel to it than that one. So, but anyway, that's all I got. So.
Nice. I think the only other one I had was Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, I love Sleepaway Camp.
Fun one.
Yeah, Sleepaway Camp was great. As far as summer camp horror movies, actually, have you seen The Burning?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jason Alexander's in it.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. What was that?
I said that was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, The Burning is great. I love the scene where that guy chops all those kids in the boat, like to pee with the hedge clippers. Like,
yeah.
Oh my god, that was so weird. Like, oh man. Yeah, so much better than Friday the 13th though. Like, yeah, I love The Burning. And then also, I don't know if this is even worth mentioning, but I also really liked House on Sorority Row. even though the acting in it is terrible. But I do love that one, you know. And I also, as bad as they are, I also love the Slumber Party Massacre movies. Yeah. You know, acting in all of them is terrible across the board. The second movie in particular is insanely bad in a way that actually makes it's actually an interesting movie. Like, it's actually so bad that it's worth watching. Like, I don't know. That's one we should do for the show at some point. Slumber Party Massacre Part 2.
Is that the one with like the drill guitar?
Yeah, that's the one with the drill guitar.
Okay.
The killer in it, he has an electric guitar that he's playing, and it's got a power drill on it, and he chases after the girls while playing the guitar and jamming out to like these rock songs and stuff, and they're screaming and run away, and it's like a musical, and it's just so stupid. Like, there's a lot I want to say about that one, but you know, I think we should we should choose that one to watch at some point if we decide to go back to watching more 80s movies.
All right.
Yeah, that, unless that was made in the 90s. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to look it up yet. But Slumber Party Massacre 2 is worth watching because of how bad it is. So,
yeah.
And I think we could have a good conversation about that one.
All right.
Basically, any 80s slasher sequels are amazing.
Oh my gosh. There's some real good ones. And, you know, like, I gotta say, I mean, a lot of them I forgot even existed. Like, I forgot that there were, like, how many sequels to Amityville Horror?
A lot.
Yeah.
I just got a box set of 4, 5, 6, and 7, I think.
Wow. There's so many of them. Oh my god. And I've seen actually a decent amount of them. Not all of them, but I've seen, like, I saw the first 2. I know that. And then I think I saw Amityville 1992. It's About Time, yeah. Which is one of the worst. So the reason it's called Amityville 1992, It's About Time, is not only because it's a movie, like, not only is it saying, oh, it's about time they made another Amityville horror movie, but also it's a movie that the plot involves, like, time and clocks.
Jesus.
And so the title means 2 different things.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's yeah. Oh man. Oh. And then some of the Friday the 13th sequels are pretty interesting. Some of them are awful.
Got good old Christopher Glover.
Oh yeah.
Crispin Glover.
Yeah. Crispin Glover. Yeah. Christopher Glover. Crispin Glover. The dance scene in the 4th movie, you know, like, that's going to be imitated till the end of time, I think.
Yeah.
But then there was Jason movie that didn't even have Jason in it.
The first one.
Well, there was that one, but then I think there was another one that they did that way. They tried to do it again. They in one of them, it was either the 5th one or the 6th one. They're like, oh, let's see what happens if we don't bring Jason back. And then they tried it. It didn't work at all. It was really stupid.
Of course.
Yeah. I forget which one that was. And then Jason Takes Manhattan is another interestingly bad movie. Like,
yep.
You know. Yeah. There's some really great bad 80s sequels, and they made sequels to things that like you didn't even need sequels to. Like, was there really a purpose in making a Witchboard 2, you know? And then how many witchcraft movies are there, or witchcraft, whatever they're called? Like, there's like a billion sequels, most of which most people have probably never even seen. I mean,
yeah. And then there was all those Critters sequels, which were terrible.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
I just rewatched all of them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What's your favorite and what's your least favorite?
Favorite, the first one. Least favorite. Let me see what I ranked them. Because they were all pretty bad.
You said that you were saying that you got the box set or whatever.
Yeah, it has the first 4.
Oh, okay.
I know they just recently made another one a couple years ago.
Oh, sweet.
Least favorite is 4.
Oh. Yeah, there's some bad ones. And then the Puppet Masters.
Oh, there's so many of those.
There's like a million Puppet Master movies. Like
I hated the first one, so I never saw any of the other ones.
Yeah. One of them, I forget which one, involved like Nazis.
That was like number 10.
Yeah, they like took place in Nazi Germany. Yeah. Pretty much all those Full Moon Video movies, like, I mean, so many of them are, pieces of crap that we love. And then we haven't even talked about Trauma movies.
Oh yeah.
How many of those there are? Like Class of Nuke 'Em High, and then like the Toxic Avenger. Actually, I love the first Toxic Avenger, but there's Combat Shock. You ever see that one?
No.
Oh man, you want to talk about grungy? Oh, that was a gnarly movie. And it's actually, unfortunately, it hasn't aged. Unfortunately, it actually is more relevant now, I'd say, because it's a movie that's exploring like Vietnam syndrome, like PTSD, like war PTSD, and war trauma, and it actually explores it like pretty realistically, and but it's a horror movie too, so it's like it's pretty gnarly.
Damn.
And I think Trauma also put out Confessions of a Junkie as well. But anyway, we could talk about 80s horror and exploitation movies forever, but
well,
so much to talk about.
Should go back to 80s next for the next picks.
Yeah, that might be fun. Like once. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about that more. But it might be worth thinking about getting back into the 80s stuff again, because there's some really bad schlock. There's also a lot of bad 90s schlock too that I'd be interested to watch. But anyway, so hope you enjoyed our discussion of 80s horror movies. Actually, one more thing. Did you ever see any of the Child's Play films, either of you?
Yeah, I've seen all of them.
Oh, okay.
I put that down as an honorable mention, Child's Play.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The first one, yeah. The first half of the first one I find pretty scary. Then once the doll comes to life and starts attacking her, like that's when I'm like, well.
Yeah.
I mean, like when she picks up the doll and its head spins around and it's missing its batteries, like that was scary. But then when she's like, "Talk to me, damn it," and then it starts calling her a bitch and hitting her and stuff, I'm like, okay, now I can't find it scary anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Did you see the remake or reboot or whatever you want to call it?
I did.
I
did, actually.
How was it?
I actually liked it, believe it or not. Totally different kind of movie, though, from the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked Mark Hamill as Chucky.
Me too, actually. Mark Hamill did excellent voice work. I like the fact that they pretty much were like, yeah, we don't need to make another movie like a killer doll. Like, okay, yeah, we get it. Let's try to do something else with it. And they take a different direction. And at first I wasn't really sure how to feel, but I don't know. When it was over, I looked back and I liked it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually. So.
Yep, it's good.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, anybody want to say anything about Nightmare on Elm Street? Or
I don't really remember the sequels. I just remember the first one.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch them.
Yeah. Well, the first one's really scary. The sequels range from good to, good. Like I'd say like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is really good. Yeah, they range from being good to being crap. The worst by far, in my opinion, is Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, which includes a cameo by Roseanne.
Nice.
Yeah. On that note, I guess this is good night, right? Unless either of you have any more to say.
We could go on forever.
Yeah, really. I know. We gotta stop. We're gonna like make like a 6-hour-long video if we don't. So, all right. Well, have a good night, everybody. I hope you enjoyed these lists. Hope you got some good ideas for things that you may or may not have seen. Yeah, and that's all. So,
yeah. Like and subscribe.
Yes. Like and subscribe. And peace as well. Peace out.
Later.